speaker is working. Quick thank you. Just want to thank my team. They are looking after things while while we're here. So I'm very thankful for them and eternally grateful. My name is Karl. I work at Obsidian Systems. I don't know what I'm doing there. I get paid a salary to do cool stuff. I hope my boss isn't here. He's not. I'm safe. So yes, Obsidian has been my home. They share a certain set of values that I share. We're very in love with open source solutions. We're very pro-choice, not that one. Customer choice, whatever you want, you can have it. I'm part of the Smarter Code group. The Smarter Code group is there to basically focus on infrastructure as code, automation, making your dreams a reality. But that's extra. So the first thing that I quickly want to talk about is this thing called the Renaissance. Don't know if you've heard of it. Great things were produced in the Renaissance. The Mona Lisa was painted by a guy called Leonardo. He is a great painter of the Renaissance, probably a great inventor. So many things to say. Leonardo had a very nice arch rival that was a few years younger than him. The guy was called Michelangelo. Michelangelo made a very famous statue called the David. The David, yeah. He did that when he was 26. Kind of a crowning achievement when you're that young. Like a Justin Bieber of his time. Just less tattoos. But what we know of that specific time is that specific time was controlled by rock stars. The rock stars of that era was those two creators. Those guys were commissioned at a certain town hall in Italy. The guy thought it would be a great idea to oppose the two guys to, like, you have a mural that you paint here and the other guy has a mural right here. Commissioned the two greatest artists of that time to paint the mural at the same time. This was after Leonardo painted the Mona Lisa and after Michelangelo created the David statue. This happened like within 2 years of those two crowning achievements in art and sculpture was created. The guy thought it would be a good idea that these two artists get pitted against one another to create the best solution for his problem, which was a mural. So, Renaissance, right? I think we're kind of in a renaissance now with where DevOps is coming from, right? You see, painting existed and sculpting existed before the Renaissance, but those techniques weren't perfected until that time. There was no real manifestation of those techniques until this specific time. And I think the same with DevOps, which we're actually talking about, surprise. If this was a history lesson, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong place. We're talking about DevOps. So the Renaissance, we're kind of in that stage now. Coding has existed for years, 40 years, 50 years, more longer, if you look at Ada Lovelace and the gang. And all those machines have existed for a time. But now we're kind of coming at a point where everything kind of we can see progress, right? And like Michi mentioned this morning, stuff is moving so fast that it's never going to be this slow again. So, yeah. So we're talking about the philosophy of how we do or how we believe DevOps should be done. That's so restrictive and prescriptive that I don't actually want to use that. We're using this acronym. Now, I'm not going to give you Dev by PowerPoint because this is a Mac and I don't have PowerPoint, so you're lucky. We're going to talk about these 5 things. We're going to talk about culture, automation, lean, measurement, and sharing. As 5 pillars that we think is kind of fundamental to creating a DevOps culture in an organization. Now, Let's quickly talk about culture. I don't know if any of you have gone through a culture survey in your organization. It's trash, right? Usually HR has this great idea to bring people together. They might bring out drums. I don't know, are we still drumming? I heard a rumor. So the culture of an organization is pretty much summed up like this. It's nice to be nice, right? It's nice, right? It's nice to be nice. There must be trust, and there must be respect. This one's usually a very tough one in any culture. API, assume positive intent, gets hammered and drilled into my mind the whole time. No, John didn't mean to break the production database. He merely wanted to do an upgrade in production. It wasn't his intention to cause downtime. Assume positive intent, right? And obviously this leans into something like open communications, because open communications is vital in any culture. And then obviously very important in any culture is, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, right, then that kind of sucks, right? So incentive and responsibility alignment is very important, because you need to know what you need to deliver for that culture to be successful. Otherwise, everybody's running in their own direction. So another thing that we like to focus on is automation, right? Can it be automated? Sorry, I'm Afrikaans. So I'm from Pretoria. I'm wearing shoes today. You're lucky. Yeah, good joke, good joke. Internal conflict the whole time, right? So yeah, so there might be some spelling mistakes. So I think the Afrikaner way of doing a spell check is putting an emoji in, because that communicates the right thing, right? So obviously, what does everybody hate doing? We have to make that easier. Sure, feedback. So that's where we need to focus on automation. We need to try and automate the stuff that everybody hates doing, and then trying to make that easier. Lean. There's this book by Robert Maurer called Kaizen, The Spirit of Kaizen, which basically comes down to creating habits of doing small incremental change. So you want to try and minimize your workloads in a minimal fashion so that you can quickly achieve stuff. So do you know what they say about that joke about the elephant? You know, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time? No, that kind of thing. It's a lame joke, I'm sorry. Dad jokes. I have 3 children, I'm married. 8 long walks on the beach, thank you. Measure, right? Measure. It's kind of important to measure things in an organization, right? Is it successful? Kind of important. Because usually that gets measured if you get a raise or a bonus or something like that. How long is turnaround time in your organization? How long does it take from concept to shipping? Things like that. So you measure the culture by doing a few asset tests. I had notes here somewhere, can't remember. Oh, here's that button. Such a lot of notes. Oh, there we go. Here's specific questions that I jotted down. Sorry, I don't want to read off this. It sounds like school, and I hate school. On my team, right, information is actively sought. That's questions that you need to ask. Failures are learning opportunities, and messengers of them should not be punished. That's a great one. I should remember that. Responsibilities are shared. Cross-functional collaboration is encouraged and rewarded, like a dog, right? Failure causes inquiry, and new ideas are welcomed. Now, that's the stuff that you measure. I hate KPIs. You know what? That's usually the stick that you get beat to know if you've not done your work. So that's really bad. KPIs are bad, people. So measure things that is important, like how many alerts are you getting? Alert fatigue. How many issues is open? Is the flow? I'm sure there's beautiful agile words for that, Lisa. I don't have the agile words. I just call it stress. Stress and no sleep. So yeah, that's it, right? And then obviously sharing, right? In a culture of sharing, you have to share your ideas. You have to share what works, what doesn't. Share your progress and share the process. Very important to share the process on how you do things, because usually we have events like this, and I'm not going to do any name calling, but the banks, right? I don't know if you heard of them. money, Bitcoin, blockchain, transactions. Banks, without shifting blame or something like that, you guys are very big organizations and cultures on your own, but you are silos, right? You're a silo with mini silos in between. I don't know if you've seen that, but you kind of have to communicate via email to get something done and so on. Now you bring all the banks in one room, and you guys are surely have collaborated on different kinds of projects before, and you've invented the wheel, they've invented the wheel. Why not sit around the same table and say, like, listen, we're not gonna steal ideas, we're just gonna share what works and what doesn't work. If you have that kind of premise, that kind of sharing saves 3 months at a time, or 4 months of a proof of concept that could have been saved, you know? This is the kind of cross-organizational sharing that's very important. So, okay, that's enough boring stuff, right? So memes, right? Yeah, so usually marketing comes to us and says, like, listen, well, they don't. Our marketing department is very focused on a certain demographic. That's not people, that's more product focused. So yeah, so these guys are focused on a specific dimension. And we're here to help you to try and see our dimension in our specific way. So Obsidian, I don't know why I'm keeping calling their names. Maybe it's because they pay my salary. Okay, doing open source for 23 years. Kind of important. So we've known about source code for 23 years, right? So our core business always, what's wrong? This is not working. Really, that's the only, okay, yes, yeah. Wow, there's still 6 words. If you adjust it, they won't go smaller. They're supposed to be that size. Anyway. So we've been doing open source for 23 years. Interesting that you can learn a few things of customers' infrastructure over that period of time. So we've managed, our legacy business has been to always manage customers' infrastructure, right? Now you guys think you have legacy, right? You think you have legacy, cute. So currently we support 18 different Linux versions since I last checked, which was last week. That's a lot of Linux versions, right? We support 3 different kinds of architectures. So 18 times 3, how much is that? 54. Thank you, Google. Right? So that's a list of the Linux distributions that we support, right? We manage all our Linux infrastructure through a SSH configuration, and currently that SSH configuration is 2,300 lines. It's a lot of machines in that file that we need to manage. And the things that we've learned of these specific things is that legacy is a state of mind, because we have different cultures within our own organization. We have a legacy infrastructure team, might be building 7 or 9 at the CSIR, those guys that think Novell's cool, or those guys that think IPX is still better than TCP, things like that. So it's just, that's an old joke. Sorry, that's from the 90s. The thing is that we have to rethink the way that we have to do things, but obviously we need to introduce these DevOps principles into something that actually doesn't support that kind of thinking. So we've tried to focus specifically on things like infrastructure as code. And one of the things that we've been working on to test our specific infrastructure as code stuff is to try and get our configurations in a unified state across all our Linux estate that we manage. So we've used, one of the tools that we use to specifically do that is a tool called Test Kitchen. And Kitchen is a free tool that you can download. It has multiple drivers for multiple pieces of infrastructure. You can see that this picture shows you that it supports stuff like DigitalOcean, it supports Azure, Google Compute, supports Windows, supports Docker, and supports Vagrant. Don't know if any of you guys have used Vagrant before in your development life cycles. Quickly raise a hand if you've used Vagrant before. Okay, thanks Thomas, you're a star. And then obviously, I don't know if you've heard of configuration management languages, stuff like Chef. Have you heard of Chef, Puppet maybe? maybe Ansible, nobody uses that, Salt Stack, things like that. And we've seen these days a lot of WinRM. Have you heard of WinRM before? Okay, tough ground. Anyway, so Test Kitchen allows us to use different kinds of virtualizers to spin up infrastructure in the specific environments in different ways. And then using different configuration languages to get everything in a unified state. And then obviously it supports any kind of distribution that you would want, Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever. And then we have a specific testing framework that we run against everything so that we can test to make sure that things work. So this is I'm sharing our production code with you. Sorry it's so impressive. It's nice and elegant and it works. So this is part of our testing framework. So what happens is when we write new configuration, now you're going to tell me, how the hell does this relate to anything Atlassian? I'm coming there. Hou vas julle. I'm coming now. I'm coming. Wait. Sorry. Anyway, yeah. So, train of thought. Yes, okay. So, yeah, I have ADD. I'm not on meds. I had coffee and Coke. Coke, not Coke. Anyway. So, yeah, sure. So, our test configurations look like this. So, each time we submit code, it spins up virtual machines. This one spins up virtual machines. So, it actually spins up 5 virtual machines on a host, runs our code on it, vanilla machines, runs our compliance tests on it, makes sure that everything works successfully, and then destroys the machines. Now, obviously, this is very CPU and memory intensive because these things are huge. So I have to show the mandatory Ansible slide. This is Test Kitchen using Ansible. Nobody cares. Anyway, so here's the same piece of code, just using Docker as that same thing. So in the old days, we could spin up on a beefy machine. We could spin up these machines one by one and then run our infrastructure tests on them. And we would usually get a result between 12 and 14 minutes for a result on the specific tests that we run on machines. Now, that's with a machine with like 24 gigs of RAM, multiple core CPUs, and so on. So I'm just quickly going to exit this presentation and quickly show you, because I've done my tests with Docker, and it failed. So I'm not showing you that. So our tests on Docker usually takes up, let's have a look. I'm quickly going to spin up a few things here. So you can see I'm not doing any black magic. So yeah, so we're spinning up infrastructure now on this little laptop thing. This has got 8 gigs of RAM and an i5 CPU. We can do the same infrastructure tests that we used to do with virtual machines. We do in 4 minutes with containers. Amazing, wow. Moore's law. Apparently it's going to be a big thing. Cool. So our test pipelines obviously look like this. You have that nice one. We don't have that. We just test everything. That's our pipeline. And we're very fond of a certain tool set. Now, obviously, because this is very technical, and I'm technical, and they don't let me out of the office. So I don't go to the office because that reason. They don't let me out of the office a lot. We can have these technical discussions on those nice couches. You bring drinks, I have snacks. Netflix and chill, right? So we can talk about how to build specific pipelines. But I just want to see if my tests are still running. Sorry, just a little stickler. Oh, it's still running. So we're building our VMs here very nicely, nothing matters. So obviously we use Bitbucket to check in our code, and as soon as we have a specific branch or a specific place that we commit our code, there's specific automated tests that happen. We use a little plugin that is the kitchen plugin for Bamboo. And Bamboo goes and checks out that specific branch and then spins up the appropriate Docker containers. And then we've integrated it obviously with stuff like Slack, so that as soon as our builds are done, we get a nice notification to say, your build failed because you didn't lint your code correctly, or your tests were incorrect or something, or it's successful, and then you can sleep at night. So we integrate with Bitbucket. Bamboo checks out the code out of Bitbucket. Bamboo spins up everything, and so on. Now, obviously, how many people uses Bamboo here? Quickly raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Who uses something else other than Bamboo? Something like Jenkins or GitLab? Eyes, high up, high up, high up. Okay, real world examples, people. Real world examples. Who uses Bitbucket here? I think it's going to be quite a bit. Who uses GitLab here? Okay, 50-50 split. That's why I don't do elections. I can't count. Anyway, these days it doesn't matter. So these tools are interchangeable. We're not very prescriptive on the way that we tell customers how to build their things. Why? Because obviously you're getting locked into a specific ecosystem. I'm sorry to any of the organizers. I'm going off script now. I'm allowed to say that. Obviously, we encourage people to use stuff like Jira and Confluence. That's great tools, but your bricks and mortar tools of stuff that builds your stuff, I feel should be open source, right? Because, anyway, I'm going to get it. But, but anyway, I'm still convinced that this is the right way. Now, why are we using Bamboo? Bamboo was elegant enough for us to integrate with things. We didn't want to mess with things. It just integrated. It worked nicely with our current stack. We're not really looking at alternatives. Why? Because this is working for what we needed to do. So other friends that we use is tools like Docker. Anybody of you guys heard of Docker before? That's great. I love those hands. So Docker is cool. Anybody hear about containers before? You guys use containers? Yeah, that's great. That's great. Your checks are in the post. Just send an email to marketing. They'll make sure you get a piece of paper. Digital paper you can mark as spam. Cool. So another thing is we use Chef. There's lots of different configuration languages out there. We're not prescriptive. We prefer this because we're realistic. We're forward-thinking people. But obviously, it's opinions. And the cool thing is it's 2018, people. It's time to use a configuration management tool. So if it's Ansible, Chef or SaltStack, or PowerShell even, we don't really care. We just want people to use configuration management. Can we all agree on that? Yeah. Yes. Kitchen, we use Kitchen. Kitchen is amazing. Obviously, you've seen what it can do. If it's still doing its thing, let me just quickly see if it's still building. Oh, yes. 4 minutes, 43 seconds. And that was automated tests building 4 different kinds of environments, Braille, Ubuntu environments, running automated tests, 25 per machine, so it's 100 tests. 4 minutes on a MacBook Air. Very nice, very elegant, very simple to do, and very nicely and very repeatable. Other stuff that we use is Inspec by Chef. Inspec can be used with Ansible or Puppet or Chef or SaltStack if you're so inclined. Even on Windows or any kind of machine that has SSH access or WinRM, these tests basic configuration settings, firewall settings, TCP settings, is packages installed, disk sizes, anything. So imagine an audit language for your infrastructure. Inspec's great for that. Inspec also has great support for stuff like Azure, Google Compute, and Google Compute, Azure, which one's missing? The bookstore, AWS, yes. So if there's any firewall rules and stuff that you have in AWS, it makes sure that, you do it. So I have this joke about the different cloud providers. You can either host your infrastructure on an online advertising platform. You can either host your online infrastructure at a bookstore or somebody that knows something about operating systems. But by no means does that say that I endorse them. Anybody from Microsoft here? Yeah, there's an apology queue out there, I know it. Anyway, other tools we use is Vagrant and Terraform. This is to spin up our virtual infrastructure, obviously with Vagrant and things like that. We're very big lovers of Terraform. Terraform is such an amazing tool for enabling us to provision infrastructure in the cloud. Anybody of you using Terraform? I'm sure there's people that's looked at Terraform. Thanks. Obviously, you would use Terraform because it's so amazing. Raise your hand if it's amazing. Raise your hand. No, really. Come on, buddy. Work with me. Anyway, so that's great. That's great. So all these tools that I've shown you is, well, with the exception, obviously, of the Atlassian stack, is free downloads and you can integrate it into your stacks. So yeah, so that's that. So let's recap. So we want to preach the gospel of culture and automation, lean measurement and sharing, right? So it's very important that we discuss these things, right? Because we don't live in silos. So we need to share our ideas. If we don't share our ideas, we become stagnant and we become very opinionated about how we think is the. But you know what? There is somebody that's already done what you need to do in this room. So you just need to collaborate and ask questions. We're not gonna charge you extra for that. You've already done that for yourself. You've already paid entrance. So yeah, that's me. I don't have anything else. So yeah, thank you.